The ship broke apart like a toy in a child's angry hands. Taeho watched the pieces fly into the darkness of space through his small escape pod window. Fire and metal scattered everywhere. The colony ship Starfall, which had carried 3,000 sleeping humans toward a new home, was now nothing but burning dust. Taeho pressed his hands against the cold glass. His heart beat so fast he could hear it in his ears. He was alone. The escape pod had launched automatically when the ship's systems detected the explosion. He did not even have time to grab his full medical kit. All he had was a small emergency bag and the clothes on his back. The pod shook hard as it entered the atmosphere of a planet below. Taeho did not know this planet. It was not on any map he had seen. The Starfall had been traveling through uncharted space when something went wrong. Maybe it was an asteroid. Maybe it was engine failure. He would never know. Red flames covered the window as the pod fell faster and faster. Taeho closed his eyes and held onto his seat. He thought about his mother back on Earth. He thought about his little sister Minji, who always laughed at his jokes. He thought about the patients he had treated on the ship, the families he had helped, the babies he had delivered during the long journey. The pod hit something hard. Trees. Taeho heard branches breaking and snapping. The pod bounced and rolled and finally stopped with a loud crash. Everything went quiet. For a long moment, Taeho did not move. He was afraid to open his eyes. He was afraid he was dead. But then he felt pain in his shoulder. And he knew dead people do not feel pain. He opened his eyes slowly. The pod was tilted to one side. Smoke filled the small space. Taeho coughed and reached for the emergency release. His fingers found the red handle and pulled. The door flew open, and fresh air rushed in. Taeho crawled out of the pod and fell onto soft ground. It was covered with strange purple moss. He lay there for a while, breathing hard, looking up at the sky. The sky was orange and pink, like a sunset that never ended. 2 moons hung low on the horizon, one silver and one pale blue. He sat up slowly and looked around. He was in a forest, but not like any forest on Earth. The trees were massive, taller than any building Taeho had ever seen. Their bark was dark blue, and their leaves glowed softly with green light. Strange flowers grew everywhere, opening and closing like they were breathing. Taeho stood up on shaking legs. He checked his body for injuries. His shoulder was bruised but not broken. He had a small cut on his forehead. Nothing serious. He had been very lucky. He opened his emergency bag and looked inside. There was a water bottle, half full. There were 3 food bars. There was a small knife, a fire starter, and a basic first aid kit. Not much for survival on an unknown planet. The first thing Taeho did was look for water. He walked carefully through the forest, watching every step. The ground was soft and wet. Small creatures ran away from him, hiding in the glowing bushes. They looked like rabbits, but with 6 legs and large black eyes. After an hour of walking, Taeho found a stream. The water was clear and cold. He tested it with a small strip from his kit. Safe to drink. He filled his bottle and drank deeply. The water tasted sweet, like spring rain. He decided to make camp near the stream. He gathered fallen branches and built a small shelter between 2 large roots. The roots were bigger than cars, curving up from the ground like giant fingers. They would protect him from wind and rain. As the orange sky grew darker, Taeho heard sounds in the forest. Strange calls and cries echoed through the trees. Some were high and musical. Others were deep and rumbling. He did not know what made these sounds, and he was not sure he wanted to find out. He started a small fire using his fire starter. The flames danced and crackled, pushing back the darkness. Taeho ate one of his food bars slowly, trying to make it last. He had no idea how long he would be stuck here. Days? Weeks? Maybe forever. That thought scared him more than anything else. He was a medic, not a survival expert. He knew how to heal wounds and cure sickness. He did not know how to hunt or build proper shelter. He did not know which plants were safe to eat or which animals were dangerous. But Taeho was not a person who gave up easily. His father had taught him that. His father had been a doctor too, working in small villages where there was never enough medicine or equipment. He had taught Taeho to stay calm in bad situations, to think clearly, to find solutions. Taeho looked up at the strange sky and the two moons. Somewhere up there, rescue ships might be searching for survivors from the starfall. He just had to stay alive until they found him. The first night was the hardest. Every sound made Taeho jump. Every shadow looked like a monster. He kept the fire burning bright and held his small knife close. Sleep came in short pieces, broken by fear and cold. When morning finally came, the sky turned from dark purple to soft orange again. Taeho stretched his stiff body and looked around. The forest looked different in the daylight. Less scary. Almost beautiful. He spent the day exploring the area around his camp. He found berry bushes with red fruit that his testing strip said were safe. He found more streams and a small pond. He saw many small animals, but nothing big or dangerous. On the third day, Taeho started to feel hopeful. He had enough water. He had found food. His shelter kept him dry when rain fell from the orange sky. Maybe he could survive here after all. But on the third night, everything changed. Taeho was sitting by his fire, eating berries, when he heard something crashing through the forest. Something big. The ground shook slightly with each step. Trees creaked and groaned as something pushed through them. Taeho grabbed his knife and pressed his back against the giant root. His heart pounded in his chest. The crashing sounds came closer and closer. He could hear heavy breathing now, wet and rough. Then he saw it. At first, Taeho thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. The creature that stumbled into the clearing near his camp was impossible. It could not be real. It was a dragon. A small dragon, maybe the size of a large dog, but still a dragon. It had scales that shimmered between blue and silver. It had wings, thin and delicate like a dragonfly's wings. It had a long tail and a head with two small horns. Its eyes were golden, bright even in the firelight. The dragon fell to the ground near the stream. It made a sound like crying, high and sad. Its left wing was bent at a wrong angle, torn and bleeding. Taeho did not move for a long moment. He just stared at the impossible creature. Dragons were not real. Dragons were stories from old books, pictures in children's games. But this dragon was very real. And it was very hurt. The dragon lifted its head and looked at Taeho. Its golden eyes were full of pain and fear. It was just a baby, Taeho realized. A baby dragon. Alone and injured. Just like him. Taeho put down his knife. He took a deep breath. He was a medic. He helped those who were hurt. It did not matter if they were human or something else entirely. He walked slowly toward the dragon, his hands raised to show he meant no harm. The dragon watched him with those golden eyes, but did not try to run away. Maybe it was too tired, maybe it was too hurt, or maybe it somehow knew that this strange two-legged creature wanted to help. Taeho knelt beside the dragon and looked at its wing. The tear was bad but clean. No infection yet. The bones seemed bent but not completely broken. He could fix this. He had to try. He reached into his emergency bag and pulled out his first aid kit. The dragon watched every move he made. Its breathing was fast and scared. But it stayed still. Taeho began to work. Taeho worked slowly and carefully. His hands did not shake, even though his heart was beating fast. This was what he was trained to do. He had treated hundreds of patients on the Starfall. He had worked through emergencies and disasters. But he had never treated a dragon before. The baby dragon watched him with golden eyes that never blinked. It made small sounds, like a kitten crying, but it did not move. It seemed to understand that Taeho was trying to help. First, Taeho cleaned the wound on the wing. He used water from his bottle and the small cloth from his medical kit. The dragon's blood was dark red, almost black in the firelight. The wound was deep, but not too wide. Something sharp had torn through the thin skin of the wing. The dragon whimpered when Taeho touched the torn area. He stopped and waited. He spoke softly. using the same calm voice he used with scared children on the ship. "It's okay," he said. "I know it hurts. I'm trying to help you. Just stay still for me." The dragon did not understand his words, but it seemed to understand his tone. It relaxed a little, and let Tahoe continue working. Next, Tahoe examined the wing bones. They were thin and light, like bird bones. The main bone was not broken, just bent slightly. The dragon must have crashed hard onto something, maybe a tree or a rock. Tahoe gently pushed the bone back into its proper position. The dragon cried out, a sharp sound that echoed through the forest. "I'm sorry," Tahoe whispered. "I'm so sorry. But that was the worst part. It's almost over now." He pulled out his bandages. He did not have many left, but this was important. He wrapped the wing carefully, supporting the bent bone and covering the torn skin. He worked slowly, making sure the bandage was not too tight. The dragon needed to be able to breathe and move. When he was finished, Tahoe sat back and looked at his work. The bandage was white against the blue-silver scales. It looked strange, but it would help the wing heal. In a few weeks, if everything went well, the dragon would be able to fly again. The dragon lifted its bandaged wing and examined it. It turned its head this way and that, looking at the white cloth from different angles. Then, it looked at Tahoe. Something changed in those golden eyes. The fear faded away, replaced by something else, something like wonder. The dragon made a soft sound, almost like a purr. It moved closer to Tahoe and pressed its head against his chest. Tahoe froze for a moment, surprised by the gentle touch. Then he slowly raised his hand and placed it on the dragon's head. The scales were warm and smooth, like polished stones left in the sun. The dragon closed its eyes and leaned into his touch. For a long moment, they stayed like that, the human and the dragon, alone in the strange forest under the orange sky. Tahoe realized he was smiling. It was the first time he had smiled since the crash. The night grew colder as the hours passed. Tahoe moved closer to the fire, and the dragon followed him. It curled up beside him like a large cat, its tail wrapped around its body, its head resting on its paws. The bandaged wing was folded carefully against its side. Tahoe did not sleep much that night. But it was not because of fear. He kept looking at the dragon, amazed that such a creature existed. He had traveled across the stars and crashed on an unknown planet. He had thought he was alone, but now he had a friend, even if that friend was a small dragon who could not speak. When morning came, the dragon woke first. It stretched its body like a cat, careful not to move its injured wing too much. Then it stood up and walked toward the stream. Tahoe watched it drink water, its long tongue lapping at the cool liquid. The dragon came back and sat in front of Tahoe. It tilted its head and made a sound like a question. Tahoe laughed. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "I don't have much, but I can share." He took out his last food bar and broke it in half. He offered one piece to the dragon. The dragon sniffed it carefully, then took it gently from his hand. It chewed slowly, its golden eyes watching Tahoe the whole time. They ate together in comfortable silence. Tahoe thought about how strange his life had become. A week ago, he was treating patients on a spaceship. Now he was sharing breakfast with a dragon on an alien planet. He should have been scared. He should have been panicking. But somehow, he felt calm. After eating, Tahoe checked the dragon's wing again. The bandage was still in place. There was no new bleeding. The dragon let him touch and examine without any fear. It trusted him completely now. Tahoe spent the day improving his camp. He built a better shelter using large leaves and more branches. The dragon helped in its own way, dragging small sticks with its mouth and dropping them near Tahoe. It was like having a strange assistant who did not understand the work but wanted to be useful anyway. By afternoon, Tahoe had a proper shelter that could keep out rain and wind. The dragon seemed to approve. It walked inside, turned around 3 times, and lay down with a happy sigh. As the day passed, Tahoe learned more about his new friend. The dragon loved berries, especially the red ones from the bushes near the stream. It was scared of loud noises but curious about everything else. It liked to chase the small six-legged rabbits, but never caught any. It made different sounds for different things, almost like it was trying to talk. Tejo started calling the dragon Buell, which meant star in his language. He had traveled through stars to find this place, and now he had found a little star of his own. The second night was much better than the first. Bile slept beside him, warm and soft, and Tejo felt safer than he had since the crash. He did not know if rescue would ever come. He did not know what dangers waited in this forest. But for now, he was not alone. And that was enough. On the morning of the third day together, something changed. Tejo woke up to find Bile standing at the edge of the clearing. The dragon was looking at the sky, its whole body tense and alert. It made a sound Tejo had not heard before. Low and almost sad. "What is it?" Tejo asked, walking over to stand beside the dragon. Bile looked at him with those golden eyes. Then it looked back at the sky. Far above, through gaps in the massive trees, Tejo could see shapes moving. Large shapes with wings, circling high in the orange sky. More dragons. Bile made the sad sound again. It wanted to be up there with them. It wanted to fly, but its wing was still hurt. It could not join the others. Tejo knelt beside the dragon and put his hand on its back. "Your wing will heal," he said softly. "Give it time. Soon you'll be flying again." Bile seemed to understand. It pressed its head against Tejo's shoulder, seeking comfort. They watched the distant dragons together, until the shapes disappeared behind the clouds. That evening, something unexpected happened. Bile stood up suddenly, ears raised, nose pointing toward the dark forest. It made a soft chirping sound. Before Tejo could react, the dragon turned and looked at him. Its golden eyes were bright with something like excitement. Then Buell walked toward the forest edge. "Wait!" Tejo called. "Where are you going?" But the dragon did not stop. It looked back once, made that soft purring sound, and disappeared into the darkness between the glowing trees. Tejo stood by his fire, heart heavy. Bile was gone. The dragon had healed enough to move around, and now it was returning to its own kind. That was natural. That was right. Bile was not a pet to be kept. It was a wild creature who belonged in this world, but Tejo had not expected it to hurt so much. He sat down by the fire alone. The night felt colder now, quieter. The space where Buell usually slept looked empty and wrong. Tejo told himself this was good. The dragon was going home. The dragon would be happy. He did not sleep well that night. He kept listening for familiar sounds, hoping to hear Bile coming back. But the forest stayed quiet, and the dragon did not return. When morning came, Tejo felt tired and sad. He made himself eat some berries and drink water. He checked his camp and gathered more firewood. He did all the normal things, but nothing felt normal anymore. He missed Bile more than he expected. 3 days passed slowly. Tejo survived, but he felt the loneliness pressing down on him. He had grown used to having the dragon beside him. Now he was truly alone again. On the third night after Buell left, Tejo sat by his fire as usual. He was thinking about the starfall, about his family, about everything he had lost. He did not hear the sounds at first. When he finally noticed them, he thought he was dreaming. Footsteps, many footsteps, heavy breathing, the rustle of wings. Tejo stood up quickly, grabbing his knife. His heart pounded as he stared into the darkness. Then, one by one, they stepped into the firelight. Dragons. Not just Bile, but dozens of them. Large ones and small ones. Old ones with scars and young ones with curious eyes. They filled the clearing around his camp, their scales shimmering in the firelight, their wings folded against their bodies. And there, at the front of them all, was Bile. The little dragon walked toward Tejo with that familiar purring sound. Behind it, an old dragon with clouded eyes and a badly healed wound on its leg shuffled forward. Tejo's knife fell from his hand. He stared at the dragons, unable to speak, unable to think. Bile chirped and nudged the old dragon forward. The old dragon looked at Tejo with ancient, tired eyes. Then it slowly lay down and extended its wounded leg toward him. It wanted help. They all wanted help. Bile had brought them here. The little dragon had told its family about the strange creature who healed wounds with white cloth, and they had come, all of them, to see the human healer. Tejo fell to his knees, tears running down his face. He was not alone anymore. He was needed. He reached out and touched the old dragon's wounded leg. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll help you. I'll help all of you." Tejo looked around the clearing at all the dragons watching him. There were so many of them. He counted quickly in his head. 37 dragons of all sizes, all ages, all colors. Some had scales of deep blue, like bile. Others were green or silver or black. A few had scales that seemed to change color as they moved, shifting between purple and gold. They stood in silence, their eyes reflecting the firelight. Some of them looked curious, some looked scared, but all of them looked hopeful. The old dragon with the wounded leg lay in front of Tejo, waiting patiently. Its leg had been hurt long ago. Tejo could tell. The wound had healed badly, leaving a twisted mass of scar tissue that probably caused pain with every step. Tejo took a deep breath. He had very few medical supplies left. His bandages were almost gone. He had no medicine, no proper tools, nothing that a real doctor would need. But these creatures had come to him for help, and he could not turn them away. He started with the old dragon. He examined the leg carefully, feeling along the bone and muscle. The scar tissue was thick and hard. It would take time and care to help this dragon walk without pain. Tejo could not heal the old wound completely, but he could make things better. He used warm water from the stream to soften the scar tissue. He massaged the leg gently, working on the tight muscles around the wound. The old dragon made a soft sound, almost like a sigh of relief. It had probably been in pain for years. No one had ever tried to help it before. The other dragons watched everything Tejo did. They seemed fascinated by his hands, by the gentle way he touched the old dragon, by the sounds he made as he worked. Bile sat beside him the whole time, chirping softly, almost like it was explaining things to the others. When Tejo finished with the old dragon, another one stepped forward. This one was larger, with dark green scales and a long scar across its face. The scar had damaged one eye, leaving it clouded and blind on that side. Tejo examined the eye carefully. He could not restore the dragon's sight. That damage was too old and too deep, but he could clean the area around the scar, remove some infected tissue that had built up over time, and make the dragon more comfortable. He worked through the night. Dragon after dragon came to him, each one with its own injury or pain. Some had torn wings like bile. Some had broken claws or damaged scales. Some had old wounds that had never healed properly. A few had infections that needed cleaning and care. Tejo used everything he had. He tore his spare shirt into bandages. He used water and gentle pressure to clean wounds. He straightened bent bones and removed infected tissue. He worked until his hands ached and his eyes burned from tiredness. The dragons never rushed him. They waited in silence, patient and calm. When one dragon's treatment was finished, another would step forward. They seemed to understand that Tejo was doing his best, even without proper tools or medicine. By the time the orange sky began to lighten with morning, Tejo had treated 15 dragons. His supplies were completely gone. His hands were covered in dark dragon blood. He was so tired he could barely stand, but he felt something he had not felt since the crash. He felt useful. He felt needed. He felt like he was doing what he was meant to do. The dragons who had been treated did not leave. They lay around the clearing, resting, waiting. The ones who had not been treated yet waited too. There was no pushing or fighting. They simply understood that the human healer needed time. Bile brought Tejo berries and water. The little dragon seemed proud, its golden eyes bright as it watched Tejo eat. It had done this. It had brought its family to the human who could help them. Tejo slept for a few hours while the dragons kept watch around him. When he woke up, they were still there. The old dragon with the bad leg was walking slowly around the clearing. testing its newly treated limb. It moved with less pain now. Its steps were more confident. The other dragons noticed. They made soft sounds to each other, almost like they were talking about what they had seen. The human had helped their elder. The human could help them too. Tahoe got back to work. He had no more bandages, but the dragons helped him find large leaves that could be used instead. He had no more clean water, but the dragons led him to a special spring deeper in the forest where the water was pure and healing on its own. They were helping him help them. Day after day, Tahoe treated the dragons. He learned their sounds and movements. He learned which ones were brave and which ones were scared. He learned which injuries were simple and which ones were complicated. He gave names to some of them. The old dragon with the bad leg became Harabuji, grandfather. The green dragon with the scarred face became Yongum. Dragon Rock, a small silver dragon who followed him everywhere, became Unbi, silver light. The dragons accepted the names like gifts. They seemed to understand that Tahoe was making them part of his family, just as they had made him part of theirs. After 2 weeks, Tahoe had treated every dragon in the group. Some would need more care over time. Some wounds would take months to fully heal. But all of them were better than before. All of them had been helped by human hands. The dragons changed after that. They stopped being visitors to his camp. They became his protectors, his family, his friends. Harabuji, the old dragon, stayed close to Tahoe during the day. It walked beside him when he gathered food or explored the forest. Its bad leg was stronger now, and it moved with new pride. It seemed to have appointed itself as Tahoe's guardian. Yongum, the big green dragon, became a hunter. It brought food to the camp every day. Fresh fish from a distant lake, strange fruits from the tall trees, sometimes even meat from animals Tahoe did not recognize. Yongum never ate until Tahoe had eaten first. It treated him like an honored guest. Bile stayed the closest of all. The little dragon slept beside Tahoe every night, just like before. Its wing was almost fully healed now. Soon it would be able to fly again, but it showed no interest in leaving. The other dragons built their nests around Tahoe's camp. They created a circle of protection, a community centered around the human healer. At night, when Tahoe sat by his fire, he was surrounded by dozens of glowing eyes, all watching him with trust and love. One evening, as Tahoe was eating dinner, Unbi the silver dragon dropped something at his feet. It was a small crystal, clear and bright, glowing with soft inner light. Tahoe picked it up and looked at the dragon. "What is this?" he asked. Unbi made a soft sound and pushed the crystal closer to him. It was a gift. Tahoe understood that without words. "Thank you," he said, holding the crystal carefully. "It's beautiful." From that night on, the dragons brought him more gifts. Crystals and pretty stones, colorful feathers from strange birds, smooth shells from the distant shore. They filled his camp with treasures, their way of showing gratitude for everything he had done. Tahoe made a special place to keep all the gifts. He built a small shelf from sticks and vines and arranged each item carefully. The dragons loved to see him looking at their gifts. They would make happy sounds and puff up their scales with pride. But despite the happiness, Tahoe sometimes felt a deep sadness. He missed human voices. He missed real conversation. He missed his family and his friends and everyone he had lost when the starfall exploded. The dragons seemed to sense his sadness. On those nights, they would gather closer around him. Harabuji would rest its big head on his lap. Bile would press against his side. Yongum would hum a low, soothing sound that felt like a lullaby. They could not replace his human family. But they were showing him that he was not alone. He was loved. He was valued. He mattered. One morning, about a month after the dragons first arrived, something new happened. Tahoe was checking Buell's wing when he heard sounds in the forest. Not dragon sounds. Something different. Something mechanical. His heart started beating faster. He stood up and looked toward the noise. Through the trees, he could see lights moving. Bright white lights. Not the soft glow of the forest. The dragons noticed too. They gathered around Tahoe, forming a protective circle. Their scales bristled. Some of them growled low in their throats. Then Tejo heard a voice, a human voice, calling out in the distance. "Hello? Is anyone out there? We're picking up a signal from this area. Is anyone alive? Rescue." After all this time, rescue had finally come. Tejo felt tears spring to his eyes. He opened his mouth to shout back, to tell them where he was. But then he looked at the dragons around him. They were scared. They did not understand what was happening. They only knew that something strange was coming toward their home, toward their healer. Harabuji stepped forward, spreading its wings wide in a defensive pose. The old dragon was ready to fight to protect Tejo. All the dragons were ready to fight. Tejo raised his hands. "Wait," he said softly. "Wait. It's okay. They won't hurt you," but he was not sure that was true. Humans feared what they did not understand. If the rescue team saw these dragons, they might attack. They might destroy everything Tejo had built here. He had to make a choice. He had to protect his new family. Tejo took a deep breath and walked toward the voices, leaving his dragon family behind. He had to meet the humans alone. He had to explain. He had to make them understand. The fate of the dragons depended on what happened next. Tejo walked toward the lights with his heart pounding in his chest. Behind him, he could hear the dragons making worried sounds. They did not want him to go. They did not understand why he was walking toward the strange bright lights and the loud voices. He pushed through the glowing bushes and stepped into a small clearing. There, he saw them. 4 humans in gray rescue suits, carrying equipment and weapons. They stopped when they saw Tejo, their eyes going wide with surprise. "We found one," a woman shouted into her radio. "We have a survivor." They rushed toward Tejo, surrounding him with questions and concern. "Are you hurt? How long have you been here? Are there others? What happened to the ship?" Tejo held up his hands. "Please," he said. "Please stop. I need to tell you something important." The rescue team went quiet. Their leader, a tall man with tired eyes, stepped forward. His name tag said, Captain Jamin. He looked at Tejo with a mix of relief and curiosity. "Take your time," Captain Jamin said. "You've been through a lot. We're just glad you're alive." Tejo took a deep breath. "I'm not alone here," he said. "I have friends. They're not human, but they're intelligent. They're peaceful. They saved my life." The team members looked at each other with confusion. One of them reached for his weapon. "What kind of creatures?" Captain Jamin asked carefully. "Dragons," Tejo said. "I know it sounds impossible, but they're real. And they're scared right now. Please don't hurt them." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Captain Jamin smiled, a small, sad smile. "Show us," he said. Tejo led the rescue team back toward his camp. He walked slowly, giving the dragons time to see that he was safe, that he was bringing these strangers in peace. When they reached the edge of the clearing, the rescue team stopped and stared. The dragons were still there, all of them, arranged in a protective circle. Harabuji stood at the front, its wings spread wide, its eyes fixed on the humans. Bile stayed close to where Tejo usually sat, refusing to leave. "My God," one of the team members whispered. "They're real. They're actually real." Captain Jamin stepped forward slowly. He held his hands out, showing he had no weapon. The dragons watched him with bright, careful eyes. "Tejo," the captain said quietly. How did this happen?" Tejo walked into the clearing, past Captain Jamin, until he stood among his dragon family. He reached out and touched Harabuji's head. The old dragon relaxed a little, lowering its wings. "I healed them," Tejo said simply. "They were hurt, and I helped them. That's all." Captain Jamin shook his head in wonder. "That's not all. That's incredible. In the history of human space travel, we've never found intelligent life like this. We've never made peaceful contact." The rescue team contacted their ship. More people came down to the planet over the next few days. Scientists, doctors, diplomats. They all wanted to see the dragons. They all wanted to understand how one human medic had made friends with an alien species. The dragons were scared at first. They gathered close together and watched the strangers with suspicious eyes. But Tejo stayed with them, talking softly, explaining that these new humans were not enemies. Slowly, carefully, the dragons began to relax. Youngum was the first to approach another human. A young scientist named Hana was sitting alone at the edge of the clearing, drawing pictures of the dragons in her notebook. Youngum walked over and looked at her drawings. Then it made a sound like laughter and nudged her shoulder. Hana froze, terrified. But then she saw that Youngum was not attacking. The big dragon was looking at its own picture, tilting its head like it was judging the artist's work. "You like it?" Hana asked in a shaky voice. Youngum made another laughing sound and lay down beside her, letting her continue drawing. After that, things got easier. The dragons began to trust the other humans, especially the ones who moved slowly and spoke softly. The humans learned to read dragon sounds and movements. They learned which dragons liked attention and which ones preferred to be left alone. But there were problems too. Some of the rescue team thought the dragons were dangerous. They wanted to study them in cages, to take samples, to learn everything about them by force. They argued with Captain Jamin about safety and protocol. Tejo stood up in one of the meetings and spoke his mind. "These dragons took care of me when I had nothing," he said. "They shared their food. They kept me warm. They treated me like family. I will not let anyone hurt them or cage them. If you try, you'll have to go through me." The room went quiet. Everyone stared at Tejo, the thin, tired medic who had survived alone for weeks on an alien planet. He did not look strong, but the fire in his eyes made even the biggest soldiers take a step back. Captain Jamin nodded slowly. "The dragons stay free," he said. "That's an order. Anyone who harms them will answer to me." From that moment on, Tejo became more than just a survivor. He became an ambassador, a bridge between humans and dragons. He taught the scientists how to approach the dragons safely. He explained their sounds and movements. He helped the doctors learn how to treat dragon injuries, and the dragons continued to come. Word had spread through the dragon community somehow. Every few days, new dragons would arrive at the clearing. Some came from distant mountains. Some came from caves deep underground. Some came from islands across the sea. They all had injuries, and they all had heard about the human healer. Tejo worked harder than he had ever worked in his life. His hands were always busy, cleaning wounds and wrapping bandages. His voice was hoarse from talking to scared dragons and curious humans. He barely slept, barely ate, barely rested, but he never complained. This was his purpose. This was why he had survived the crash. Why he had landed on this planet. Why everything had happened the way it did. He was meant to be here. He was meant to help. Hana, the scientist, became Tejo's assistant. She learned quickly and worked carefully. The dragons accepted her almost as much as they accepted Tejo. She was gentle and kind, and they sensed that about her. Together, Tejo and Hana treated over 100 dragons in the first month. Some injuries were small, some were terrible. But every dragon that came for help left better than before. The human camp grew larger as more ships arrived. Scientists from Earth, doctors from colony worlds, diplomats from the United Human Federation. They all wanted to see the dragons. They all wanted to be part of this historic moment. Some of them were good people who wanted to help. Some of them wanted power or profit or fame. Tejo learned to tell the difference. He protected the dragons from anyone who might hurt them, standing in the way when needed, arguing in meetings, making his voice heard. The dragons noticed. They saw how Tejo fought for them. They saw how he put their safety before his own comfort. And they loved him even more for it. One night, Tejo sat alone by his old fire pit. The camp was quiet. Most of the humans were sleeping in their tents and shelters. The dragons had settled into their usual circle around the clearing. Bile walked over and lay down beside him. The little dragon's wing was completely healed now. It could fly as well as any other dragon, but it still chose to stay close to Tahoe, its first friend, its savior. "I'm tired," Tahoe admitted quietly. "I don't know how much longer I can do this." Bile made a soft sound and pressed closer to him. "But I can't stop," Tahoe continued. "They need me. All of them. The dragons and the humans. Someone has to keep the peace. Someone has to make them understand each other." Harabuji walked over slowly. The old dragon's leg was strong now, almost completely healed. It lay down on Tahoe's other side, surrounding him with warmth and comfort. "Thank you," Tahoe whispered. "Thank you for everything." The two dragons made soft sounds in response. They did not need words to communicate. They understood each other perfectly. In the distance, more lights appeared in the sky. Another ship arriving, bringing more humans to this special place. Tahoe watched the lights descend and wondered what tomorrow would bring. Whatever it was, he would face it. He had his dragon family beside him. He had good friends among the humans. He had a purpose and a reason to keep going. He was the healer, and he would protect his patients no matter what. 6 months had passed since Tahoe crashed on the dragon planet. The small camp in the forest had grown into something much bigger. There were buildings now, proper shelters made from local wood and materials brought from the ships. There was a medical center where Tahoe worked every day, treating dragons and training other healers. There was a meeting hall, where humans and dragons gathered to communicate and learn from each other. The planet had been given a name. The United Human Federation called it New Hope, but Tahoe had a different name for it. He called it home. On this morning, something special was happening. The leaders of the Federation had arrived to sign an official treaty with the dragons. It would be the first alliance between humans and an intelligent alien species in all of history. Tahoe stood at the front of the meeting hall, wearing clean clothes for the first time in months. Beside him stood Harabuji, the old dragon who had become his closest friend and guardian. Around them, hundreds of dragons and humans filled the large room, all waiting for the ceremony to begin. Admiral Sujin, the highest-ranking officer in the Federation fleet, walked to the center of the room. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, but she moved with power and confidence. Everyone respected her, humans and dragons alike. "Today marks a new beginning," Admiral Sujin said, her voice carrying through the quiet hall. "For centuries, humanity has wondered if we were alone in the universe. We sent ships to distant stars, searching for other intelligent life. We found empty planets, dead worlds, nothing but silence." She paused and looked around the room at all the dragons watching her. Then one man crashed on this planet with nothing but a small medical kit. He was alone, scared, and far from home. But instead of hiding or fighting, he did what humans do best. He helped, he healed, he showed kindness to a creature he did not understand. Admiral Sujin turned to Tahoe and smiled. "And because of that kindness, we are here today. Not as conquerors or invaders, but as friends, as allies, as family." She unrolled a large document covered with human writing and strange dragon symbols. It was the treaty, written in both languages so everyone could understand. "This treaty promises peace between our species forever," Admiral Sujin continued. "It promises that humans will protect dragonlands and never take without asking. It promises that dragons will share their wisdom with humans who respect them. It promises that we will face the future together, as partners." She signed the document with a special pen that glowed blue when it touched the paper. Then she stepped back and looked at Harabuji. The old dragon walked forward slowly, its healed leg moving with strength and pride. It looked at the document for a long moment, studying the words and symbols. Then it raised its front foot and pressed it against the paper, leaving a mark in shimmering gold. The room exploded with cheers. Humans clapped and shouted. Dragons roared and spread their wings. The noise was incredible, but it was a noise of joy and hope. Tahoe felt tears running down his face. He did not try to stop them. This was the moment he had worked so hard for. This was why he had stayed strong through all the difficult times. Humans and dragons were now officially allies. They would never be enemies. After the ceremony, there was a great celebration. Dragons performed aerial dances in the orange sky, spinning and diving in beautiful patterns. Humans played music and shared food from their homeworlds. Everyone mixed together, talking and laughing and learning. Bile found Tejo sitting alone on a hill overlooking the celebration. The little dragon was not so little anymore. It had grown strong and tall over the past months. Its scales brighter than ever. Its wings powerful and wide, but it still acted like a puppy around Tejo, pressing close and making happy sounds. "Can you believe it?" Tejo asked, scratching behind Bile's ears. "We actually did it. Humans and dragons, working together. I never imagined this when I crashed here." Bile made a sound that seemed like agreement. "I was so scared that first night," Tejo continued. "I thought I was going to die alone on a strange planet. Then you showed up with your broken wing, and everything changed." He looked at Bile with love in his eyes. "You saved me, you know. Not the other way around. When I healed your wing, I found a reason to keep going. When you brought your family to me, I found a purpose. I owe everything to you." Bile pressed its head against Tejo's chest, just like it had on that first night so long ago. They sat together and watched the celebration below. Dragons and humans dancing together, eating together, building a new future together. It was more beautiful than anything Tejo had ever seen. Hana climbed the hill and sat beside them. She had become one of Tejo's closest human friends, a brilliant scientist who understood dragons almost as well as he did. "The Admiral wants to talk to you," Hana said. "She has an offer." Tejo raised his eyebrows. "What kind of offer?" "She wants you to lead a new project, building connections with other dragon communities on the planet. There are hundreds of them, in distant mountains and forests. They've heard about you, the human healer. They want to meet you." Tejo thought about this. More dragons to help, more bridges to build, more work, more travel, more responsibility. It sounded exhausting. It also sounded wonderful. "I'll do it," he said, "but only if Buell comes with me." Bile chirped happily, understanding enough to know that it was included. Hana laughed. "I don't think anyone could separate you two anyway. You're famous, you know, the man and his dragon. There are already songs about you back on Earth." Tejo groaned. "Please tell me you're joking." "Afraid not. There's even a children's show. Tejo, the healer, and his dragon friend." Tejo covered his face with his hands, but he was smiling behind his fingers. As the sun set and the celebration continued, Admiral Sujin joined them on the hill. She stood beside Tejo and looked out at the gathering below. "You know," she said quietly, "the Federation has encountered other species before. Most of those meetings ended badly. Wars, conflicts, destruction. We've made enemies across the stars because we approached everything with fear and weapons." She turned to look at Tejo. "But you approached with bandages. You saw a creature in pain, and your first thought was to help. Do you understand how rare that is? How precious?" Tejo shrugged. "I'm a medic. Helping is what I do." "No," Admiral Sujin said firmly. "Helping the way you helped is not something everyone can do. Most people would have run from that first dragon. Most people would have been too scared, too suspicious, too selfish. You stayed. You reached out. You changed everything." She put her hand on his shoulder. "Humanity is lucky to have you, Tejo. The dragons are lucky to have you. I'm honored to have met you." Tejo did not know what to say. He had never thought of himself as special or brave or important. He was just a man who did his job, who helped those who needed help. But looking at the celebration below, at the dragons and humans living together in peace, he realized that maybe that was enough. Maybe being kind and caring and willing to help was the most powerful thing anyone could be. That night, Tejo slept surrounded by his dragon family. Buell on one side, Harabuji on the other, Unbi and Yongam, and all the others nearby. The sounds of the celebration had faded into peaceful quiet. He dreamed of the future. He saw humans and dragons building cities together, exploring the stars together, facing challenges together. He saw children playing with dragon hatchlings, learning to fly on dragon backs, growing up in a world where two species were one family. When he woke in the morning, the orange sky was bright and beautiful. Bile was already awake, looking at him with those golden eyes that had trusted him from the very first moment. "Ready for a new adventure?" Tejo asked. Bile spread its wings wide and roared happily at the sky. Tejo laughed and stood up. There was so much work to do. So many dragons to meet. So many bridges to build. So many futures to create. But he was not scared anymore. He had his family beside him. He had a purpose that mattered. He had proven that kindness could change the universe, one bandage at a time. Together, the healer and his dragons walked toward the sunrise, ready to face whatever came next. Behind them, humans and dragons worked side by side, building a world of peace and friendship. And it had all started with one small act of compassion. One man wrapping a bandage on a baby dragon's wing. Sometimes, that was all it took to change everything.